This is Retiring Today, the podcast that guides you to and through retirement. I'm your host, Molly Nelson, here with AnnaMarie Morrow, Director of Medicare at Merkle Retirement Planning, and Richelle Smith, producer of this podcast. So, do you think that you have to work until age 65 because of the high cost of healthcare? Well, maybe not. In this episode, we want to discuss how you can reclaim your retirement. We'll run the numbers to show you what it could look like if you retire years earlier than you ever imagined. Plus, we'll talk about why you can't set it and forget it when it comes to Medicare, and we tackle the daunting conversation of long-term care. First, AnnaMarie Morrow, Director of Medicare here at Merkle Retirement Planning. If this is someone's first time listening to this podcast or first time listening to you, they may be going, what is a Director of Medicare? Spill the tea? Spill the tea.
The tea, the coffee. I don't know what the kids are saying these days. But yeah, as Director of Medicare, I sit down with the families and individuals we work with, and I help them enroll in Medicare, talk through them with timelines, and then discuss supplement options, all that good stuff. And more frequently, I am meeting with people before the age of 65, which is a huge mindset shift to wrap your head around, but people are wanting to retire younger and younger. So I sit down with retirement planners and we look at options within their income plan, all the holistic planning we do to see what their options are for retirement.
It's worth noting that you are right here on the premises. So whether someone's calling in for a 15-minute retirement checkup call, whether someone's coming in for an in-person visit, whether they're doing an electronic Zoom type meeting from all over the country, which you do with people all of the time, you're sitting or working with or near the retirement planner, so you guys work in collaboration.
And that's what's so powerful about the planning we do is that we have all of your advocates in one space together. So the retirement planners, healthcare, Medicare, we are all coordinating with one another because there is overlap in between all of these components of retirement, which is really fun. You know, when you think about healthcare, you don't think of, oh, well, now let me go look back at my income 2 years ago, or what have my taxes been like? You know, but those things do matter, and they do affect healthcare options and costs moving into those retirement years. And so that is where, you know, we really see that value and that power in having that planning.
So first we want to talk about where people could be right now. And a lot of people, AnnaMarie, think they've got to wait till 65 to retire.
That's right. When we ask them when you want to retire or healthcare, any questions, oh, well, I'm going to work until 65 because that's when I'm Medicare eligible. Or I'm going to work until this age because my significant other will be 65. And it's a smooth transition at that point.
And then I've heard Lauren and the other retirement planners say that they'll ask him, but when do you want to stop working? And it's not usually some magic number.
It's not. And, you know, it really can sometimes come down to that how's work going type of thing. And then it's just, well, let's explore that. You know, what does your plan show for retiring early? And then healthcare comes in as that second question, you know, oh, well, what is my healthcare going to cost? I got to have healthcare. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? And then that is where we have these options, and then we look at the plan holistically all together with that incorporated into it.
Another current mindset that a lot of people might have is when it comes to healthcare, now let's get a little more specific on Medicare, they make that election at 65 when they're Medicare eligible, and then they can just wash their hands of Medicare altogether.
Yeah, that's not a thing. The good news is Medicare A and B just once. But you're going to get that mail every single year during annual enrollment, and every year you have to make decisions. It's not as cozy as a set it and forget it.
And then when it comes to long-term care, I know I've had conversations with people in my life about long-term care, and a lot of people just don't want to think about it. It's something that they think they can't afford, or it's a tough conversation for people to have. And that's a common current mindset of people.
It's a tough conversation to have. It's emotional. A lot of times if families or individuals we worked with have had a parent or a sibling go through long-term care needs, they're definitely more apt and wanting to do planning for that, which is great. But people who have never had to face it before, we find that is an intimidating subject to dive into. And, you know, when people feel overwhelmed, we just want to forget about it. We'll deal with it at a later time. But the beauty and power, again, of this planning is it immediately can just show you, you know, one component and tied with the next component of this overall retirement plan can just show you what long-term care can look like, your needs for you, because it is a hard topic to talk about.
And it can be emotional for people. And I also think whatever you're doing in life, sometimes having an outside person come in and kind of walk you through it can take some of the emotions out of it. So we'll talk about kind of how to rethink long-term care. But first, let's go back to that retire at 65, because this is such a common mindset. But we are getting ready, ladies, to shift minds.
Oh, yes.
Do you feel like you're like a psychologist or something right now?
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay, we're not brainwashing anyone. The mind shifting that we're doing is just kind of open your eyes to a new way of thinking about retirement. So let's go to 65, because you've heard it in visits. People think they have to wait till 65, but then you ask them, hey, but how's work going? And they're like, I'm ready. And maybe they're 62, maybe they're 63, maybe they're 64. So then after they tell you that, after you find out that the number they think and the way they're feeling don't line up, what's the next step when it comes to this healthcare piece?
The next step is just talking through options, right? Everybody loves to have options. It's not just one thing or the other. Working and then retirement, ACA, huge healthcare costs, right? There's options out there, and there's planning that can go into these options to not feel overwhelming, which allows that paradigm shift to take place where people are now comfortable with retiring before Medicare eligibility.
Yeah, I've seen you do a really beautiful illustration where people think they have to step right from the employer plan over to Medicare, right? They think they have to go right from that, but then all of a sudden this bridge comes up, and there are some things that you can do in between that mean you could maybe retire 6 months earlier, a year earlier, a year and a half earlier, and then all of a sudden you've reclaimed some of your retirement years.
That's right. There's two basic options that we look at to create that bridge from employer plan to Medicare. One of them is COBRA, which is an extension of the employer plan, and you have this option whether or not you leave your employer plan voluntarily or involuntarily. And it's available to whomever was covered on the employer plan, whether it was just you or whether you also had any family members, dependents also covered by that plan. COBRA is an option to everyone who was on that plan for up to 18 months. And basically what COBRA is you're taking over the payments for the premium that your employer was making on your behalf. So for example, Jill in this illustration, she was paying while employed on the employer plan, she was paying $100 a month to have this employer coverage. Well, she found out her COBRA option, now her monthly premium for just herself was $400 a month. So all that means, that tells us, is that the employer was paying $300 on her behalf. So because of that, COBRA has been known as, such an expensive option, because now you're paying 100% of the premium. But when we do the math of reclaiming more of your retirement years by using this bridge of COBRA, the next discussion to have, the next question is, are you willing to pay, $5,400 for 18 months extra of retirement? So when we lay out that big picture and we build that bridge of gap coverage, it can really show the stress and anxiety just melting off of people's shoulders and seeing what is available, what are my options out there.
Let's go back to Jill, because you kind of introduced Jill as a name. So what we did here for the purpose of this podcast and some of the stuff we've done to illustrate this on our YouTube channel and our TV show is Jill is somebody who comes in and says, I don't want to wait till 65. I want to retire at 63 and a half. But I don't think I can afford to because of the high cost of healthcare. This is a current mindset that a lot of people have. So then you broke this down for us and said, hey, let's look at it. And you found out that she would pay $400 a month if she stayed on her old employer plan. That was the COBRA part. You found out that she would pay $450 if she went out on the open market. And then you're able to quantify for Jill, what does a year and a half look like? Well, for her, it was $5,400, which is a lot of money. And for some people, it's going to be a lot more too, by the way. It's worth saying. This could be $50,000. But I know you've heard Lauren say it, and you've said it to people before, $50,000 extra now at 63 and a half, or maybe another $100,000 at age 90. That's the decision ahead of you, and at least you can put numbers behind it. Not a feeling that it's going to be expensive. I think it's going to be too expensive. Well, what is too expensive? That's different to everyone too.
Exactly. What number allows you to reclaim those go-go years now? Is that number comfortable with you? And then when we show you the big picture, when we sit down with our families and individuals and show them the big picture of paying that now versus on the back end, it's a positive experience. It's exciting. People can realize that they can reclaim more of those go-go years.
And when we're talking about Jill, we're going with real simple numbers and some real simple solutions, but there are some other things that people have to keep in mind when they make that decision about how to bridge the healthcare gap between the employer plan and Medicare.
And you had brought up the marketplace. I do. So what happens is I have people bring in that COBRA option, what those numbers are. And then I do a compare and contrast what's available on the marketplace. And in Jill's situation, due to knowing what her income was going to look like, she has pension, if we elect her Social Security, I'm able to show her the savings we can get her on the marketplace.
Because that's all income based, right? What you pay in the open market is based on your tax return for the year prior?
The current year. The year in which you want your coverage it's based on income, age, and location. And so I'm able, with the income planning we do, I can show her, okay, this is the savings you'll have on the marketplace. Now let's compare this to your COBRA option. Once she knows that that is something she's comfortable with, is retiring earlier, well, now she has two options in front of her. And like you said, there's more that goes into it rather than monthly premium, right? We compare copays, we compare deductibles, out-of-pocket maxes, networks, HMO versus PPO. All these other factors go into it. It's not just monthly premium, but now she's feeling that confidence of being prepared, knowing what her coverage will look like and knowing it's something that she's comfortable with.
It's time for mindset shift number 2. And this is when it comes to Medicare. You kind of have to shift your mind to think about revisiting Medicare annually.
I wish people could see also that there's a graphic on our script of a crock pot, because that's a great illustration of what people think Medicare is.
Sure, you just plug it in, put it on low, let it cook all day, and it makes the house smell great.
Yeah. It can taste yummy. Yeah, Medicare sometimes doesn't taste so yummy. Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, Medicare is not a set it and forget it. The good news is when you first elect Medicare A and B, that is the only time you have to do that. And sometimes that can be the hardest and most trying time, is getting that part elected. So that, once you have A and B done, then you can just focus on your supplemental coverage, medical, drug card, dental, any coverage that can fill your needs. That's what's needing tending to every year.
And I want to point out the mindset shift here, because maybe you guys review your employee-sponsored healthcare annually. Personally, I'm not reading those documents annually, and I'm not thinking there's going to be a lot of big changes, or I'm thinking someone else will let me know, within the company. So when you get into Medicare eligibility, you really do need to recheck the plans, the coverages each year, or at least work with someone who's going to help you do that.
Yeah, first of all, as your representative on that employer plan, I'm now interested. Now I know to sit down with you one-on-one every year, Molly.
Yeah.
I also don't check it, though.
No, you kind of assume it'll be about the same. Like, I can still go to my doctors and I'll still pay about this, and my prescription will cover about this. Yeah, I don't expect any. Okay. She's like, Molly. But don't you think a lot of people in the working years are kind of on that trajectory? But you have seen that when it comes to supplements, the companies renegotiate every year, and there can be some big changes in the coverage, and especially prescription drugs.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's almost scary what I've seen transition from year to year with the cost of medications. And starting even with traditional supplements. Traditional supplements, it depends on the carrier, a bunch of information, but a lot of traditional supplements like a Plan G, Plan F, they have pretty significant price increases every year. So if you're comfortable with that, then nothing needs to be done on that side of things. But mainly it's the drugs. It's if your medications have not changed, it does not matter. Drug cards, whether it's a standalone drug card or within an Advantage plan, these drug cards do and can change every year. Not only the coverage, but how they're labeled as tiered. Every medication, whether it's generic, specialty, brand, it's labeled a different tier on a drug card. So it could still be covered going into the next year, but it could be given a higher tier to where now you're going to be paying over $50 at refill time rather than the $10 that you're used to. So this is the time frame during annual enrollment every year between October 15th and December 7th. This is the opportunity to make sure that you know what is coming to you in copays the following year, and that it's something that you're comfortable with.
And AnnaMarie, part of your job is to run the numbers for people so they don't get a big surprise at the pharmacy.
That's right. One of these examples during annual enrollment, I was sitting down with an individual, and she had provided me her list of medications, and we were just making sure that her standalone drug card was still set up correctly for her. at her pharmacy of choice. So and this is just an example, it's nothing against the drug meloxicam. I'm sure it does great work with whatever it does, but this was on her list of medications, and I had pulled up her preferred pharmacy, and I did a compare and contrast between two pharmacies. I always like to do that to just show options. And so the two pharmacies were Hy-Vee and Walgreens or Walmart. I can't remember which one of the two. And great pharmacies, right? But pharmacies can opt to contract with different drug cards, which is why I like to bring this up. So meloxicam pulls up, and at Hy-Vee, her copay for next year was going to be $12, which is what she was used to paying. And at Walgreens or Walmart, whichever one it was going to be over $1,000 for her refill, $1,000. And we just kind of both sat there like,
that's a big difference.
Whoa, that's a big difference for a generic. But, people, the thought escapes is, I also have to look at pharmacies. It's not a free-for-all out there with pharmacy coverage. So that's also one of those steps to take during annual enrollment for the following year, because pharmacies, just like drug cards every year can change what drugs they cover, pharmacies can opt out of networking with the drug cards.
And so clearly the action step for her was probably to use a different pharmacy. I mean, is it that simple?
It's that simple. Yeah. I mean, whichever provider is writing that script just needs to redirect it to a different pharmacy.
So we've got mindset shift number 1, rethink retiring before 65. Mindset shift number 2, you have to revisit Medicare annually. And mindset shift number 3, when it comes to healthcare and rethinking retirement, is to rethink long-term care. And it's one thing for a retirement planner to tell you, hey, Molly, you've got to plan for long-term care. But it's another thing when the stats really kind of back up what they're saying.
So true. I've got a staggering stat here about long-term care, which I think just everybody needs to be aware of, right? 70% of those 65 and older will need some form of long-term care. 70%. And then once they need it, for women, they will need long-term care on average for 3.7 years, whereas men will need it for at least 2.2 years on average.
And let's stick with the stats. Some more staggering numbers. The cost of long-term care. So in 2023, assisted living in the Midwest, about $4,500 a month. Nursing home, private room, $9,000 a month. But let's say you don't need that right now. Let's say you need it in 20 years. Well, we know that the rate of healthcare inflation is higher than the rate of annual inflation. So the projections are for 2043, assisted living will cost $8,600 a month. Nursing home, private room, $17,000 a month.
Wow.
And people need it for years. I mean, those statistics was 3.7 years, not months, 2.2 years. That's a big number. And that's a hard conversation to have with families. I mean, it can be so overwhelming. Well, let's just avoid that conversation because we might not need it. But with the power that we do in planning, it can show us and give us that confidence in moving forward with decisions so that we can sleep at night.
And does Medicare cover any of this?
It doesn't. I'm glad you brought that up, because when I review a summary of benefits with individuals when we're making their supplement decisions for medical, whether it's traditional or an Advantage plan, I go over their coverage, inpatient hospital, skilled nursing, up to 100 days. And then the question is, well, what happens after 100 days? Not Medicare. 100 days. And that doesn't sound like a very long time. That's just over 3 months. And at that point, that's where long-term care would take over.
Yeah, and AnnaMarie, you can keep talking about the plan, but it's really hard, I think, for people to think, how the heck will I plan for $17,000 a month for private nursing home monthly living cost? So here's a great way to wrap your mind around this. And Lauren Merkle does a really great job of explaining it in our Rethink Retirement series. He goes through 4 options for funding long-term care. And yes, self-funding is one of them, and that is a route that a lot of people go. But wouldn't you rather choose that route than have that route chosen for you? Because if you show people, yes, you're going to have enough money to self-fund for the 2 years, the 3 years, the 1 year, as opposed to having to self-fund because you had no plan.
Exactly. There's a lot of comfort when you can see it within your overall plan, what your plan allows you to do. And if self-funding is not one of those options, there are other options available, which, like you said, Lauren really dives into in that workshop series.
Yeah, he goes through traditional long-term care policies, the good and the bad. that. He talks about an income annuity as a possible option for some people and a life insurance hybrid approach. So if you want more details, here's what you do. You go to rethinkretirementseries.com. That link is in the show notes. You can sign up for our workshops there. They're designed to help you rethink retirement and get more retirement ready. AnnaMarie, that legacy planning workshop has been really popular.
It really has been. There's included in that 3 often overlooked legacy planning documents. And what we hear all the time is, I didn't know that. And this addresses that. These workshop series are powerful in that they're getting the unknowns out there for people to digest and really incorporate into their overall planning.
Retirement really is a mindset shift. It's an exciting time, but there are a lot of decisions you've never had to make before. Go to rethinkretirementseries.com right now or find that link in our show notes to sign up for this series of workshops. This has been Retiring Today, and we thank you for listening. Merkle Retirement Planning is an independent financial services firm helping individuals create retirement strategies using a variety of investments and insurance products to custom suit their goals and objectives. Any information discussed in these shows is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as investment, tax, or legal advice. Investment advisory services are offered through Elite Retirement Planning LLC. Insurance services are offered through MRP Insurance LLC.